Hello and welcome to the Low Carb Conversations podcast. Leah and I are back for another episode. Hi, Leah. How are you?
Hi, Holly. I'm good. Hi, everyone.
Hello. I have been off the last couple of weeks, so if you missed me, here I am.
She's
Leah, did you
back.
miss me?
I missed you. I did miss you. I think we gel really well. And when you're not here, I'm like, Holly would have asked a really good question right now, and I can't think of anything.
Well, I feel the same. I know it's just kind of been tricky with our calendars coordinating with our time difference, but I think we are good for the next few weeks or so. We shouldn't have any more solo episodes. Not
That's right.
planned,
Not
anyways.
planned. Yeah.
All right. Well, today we are going to be talking all about autoimmune disease and the role diet may or may not play. Um, Before we get started, do you have anything you want to share or talk about, Leah, or should we just dive right in?
I think we should just dive right in. But as an interesting fact, we do tend to talk about autoimmune diseases around this time every year because the Autoimmune Paleo Summit is usually on, but we just missed it last week. So I just wanted to give a little shout out because you can still go in and buy the recording of the talks that are on there. And it's a great summit by autoimmune paleo certified coaches. So it's like one of those weekend ones where you can listen to all the latest kind of science coming out, practical cooking, all of those kind of things. So I'll find that link to if you want to purchase it. So it's already been on for free. They just had the encore weekend this last weekend. But yeah, if you want to dive a little bit deeper than what we're talking about today, it's always a good one to get to listen to. So I'll link that up into the show notes for everyone.
Yeah, and maybe even after this episode, if you're not even familiar with the role diet does play in autoimmune disease, so maybe you're thinking that's not interesting now. After this episode, you might change your mind because you will be surprised at how many things are interconnected when it comes to autoimmune. So let's get started. This first article, it's from the World Economic Forum, and the article is titled, "Is the Western Diet Causing a Spike in Autoimmune Diseases?" Um, and really, it's just talking about, yes, there are times when people want to have burgers or pizza or some fried chicken, and fast foods like these have become very popular all around the world. And it's asking the question, could eating these things regularly be responsible for the global spike in cases of autoimmune diseases? So some scientists were wondering, they did some research. They say that autoimmune conditions are those where the body's immune system confuses our healthy cells with unwelcome microorganic intruders, meaning your body starts attacking itself rather than pathogens or things that aren't supposed to be in the body that it is supposed to attack. Autoimmune diseases most people are familiar with, type 1 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, just to name a few. But they're saying that these conditions are becoming more prevalent, especially in regions such as the Middle East or East Asia, where numbers in autoimmune diseases were previously low in years before now. And the researchers are thinking that the culprit could be Western fast foods because those have gained popularity. They have spread globally. You pretty much can't go anywhere in the world now and not find a McDonald's or not find a Starbucks. So the reach is far and wide. So that is what this article is talking about here. This really is a serious issue, and it's important that we ask these questions around why autoimmune diseases are rising so rapidly. The article will talk about some statistics here that we can get into, but just in the US alone, autoimmune diseases has tripled in recent decades. And I think about 24 million Americans are now affected, not infected with autoimmune disease. And in the UK, 4 million people. And that's actually about 7% of Americans and 7% of the UK. So it's, I just based on those two numbers, spreading pretty evenly, or rising, not spreading, not infected and not spreading.
It's autoimmune is not something that you can catch.
No, it's not. Okay. I have to clarify my words here.
Do you have an autoimmune
So
disease, Holly? I was just wondering before we get started into it. debating this
I
article?
do. I have psoriasis, and I've had it since I was a child. So that's really fun.
Yeah. And I have Hashimoto's, and I've had that. I was, I had to have a doctor telehealth consult the other day, and it was a different doctor. I couldn't get in with my usual one. And he was asking all the precautionary questions. And he was like, and how old were you? How long have you had your autoimmune disease for? And I'm like, oh, over 20 years now. That's what hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, over 20 years I've been living with this now. So yeah. So
Yeah. And I've had mine since I was a child. I'm fortunate that it is pretty mild because as a child, we always thought it was just eczema or something. But it does run in my family. I have an aunt who has it very badly. It covers a lot of her body. So I'm fortunate that it's not too severe in me, but I do notice that it does get worse if I'm not eating as clean. So we can talk about that. Well, and this is kind of off topic too, but also I see differences or like flare-ups with weather changes. And now, especially since I'm going through a detox protocol and with my cell core products, sometimes things get worse before they get better. So I am also currently having a flare up, but I know that is a healing response, and probably coupled with the change in weather.
yeah. And interestingly, we're going to be focused mainly on diet here, but I believe in everything, all the work that I've done with autoimmune diseases is that it's lifestyle plays a big factor here as well. So it's diet, lifestyle, genetics that are the main factors in autoimmune disease.
Huge factor. And just a little side note here in the article, it says when it talks about people in the UK, it says 7% of the population have at least one autoimmune disease. So a note here is that once you have one autoimmune disease, you're more likely to develop one or more also, because once your body's already kind of trekking down that road, that disease pathway, you are more susceptible to developing more autoimmune diseases. So it is important that we talk about these things, that lifestyle factors and dietary factors play such a huge role, because as we'll get into also, there are ways to reverse symptoms, and even to the point to where sometimes autoimmune diseases go into remission to where they're not even detectable. So, but let's stay on track. All right. So this article is blaming food, or pointing to food as the culprit. But I don't think we can put all the blame on food here, because genetics play a factor, as we mentioned, lifestyles, our environment, and even our gender. With 8 out of 10 being women affected with autoimmune disease. These are all contributing factors. The article talks about fast food diets and their lack of important nutrients as being the one thing it calls out, and particularly it mentions the lack of fiber. Like, of all things, like, I don't know if it's lack of fiber in the nutrient as a nutrient in the fast foods. I'm sure that fiber plays a role, but I can't help but think that it's probably more the ingredients that are in, or the things that are added into fast foods, that are the problem, and not so much their lack of nutrients. So maybe it's MSG, it's pesticides, it's colors, it's flavors, it's preservatives, it's GMOs, it's those toxic rancid seed oils that we love to talk about. So I think it's probably more those things than the lack of things, probably a combo, but we can't just call out fiber and leave it at that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different things going on here. So number one is the processed foods, the fast foods. Our body just simply doesn't recognize those foods. And so when we're eating those foods, the body doesn't know how to break them down or process them. There's no nutrient value in them either. And so the body's response is to cause inflammation in the body. So I think that's something that's happening there. And then secondly, yeah, the lack of nutrients. If you're just eating processed foods or the one kind of food all the time, you're not getting a variety of minerals. And I think maybe, kind of weaving in some of the fibery kind of stuff is we get a lot of our minerals from our vegetables and fruits. So vegetables mainly. So if you're eating fries all the time, you're not going to be eating, much leafy green vegetables, which are full of our minerals, which is where a lot of our nutrient density is coming from, which is required for our health. And also, we're not eating the same kinds of foods that we once used to eat. So we're not eating a lot of our traditional foods anymore, especially if we're eating a Western style diet. So we're not getting the variety of minerals and nutrients that we once used to get. So I can see that being a problem there. So I think, like, to take a step back even further, was that autoimmune diseases in our grandparents' era, or and before that, didn't exist. They really have just come on board in recent years. And the question is, why is that? And so we're saying perhaps it's because there's a lack of minerals, nutrient density in the diet that is required for our body to be healthy. That could be definitely one reason there. Is it because of the rise of Western foods, and we're tending to rely on those a lot more? And I think another big one that we probably haven't considered here is stress. I think stress plays a big part in that as well. So I think, why is there a rise in autoimmune diseases all of a sudden? I think we need to look at our lifestyle and diet, which is what we're looking at here.
Right, because we didn't see these diseases as prevalently as we see them now 200 years ago.
Yeah.
And this really sad thing is that we are now seeing them in children, where things like rheumatoid arthritis or even MS and type 1 diabetes, those were not things that kids got when our grandparents were kids, but those are very common things that kids are getting now too. So we have to be asking these questions. You mentioned French fries, or not French fries. Yeah, you said French fries, and when you think of like most fast foods, or you think of Western diet, like it very commonly is like a burger and fries, or even like taco places have French fries. So French fries are everywhere now. And in school lunches, or even at schools, French fries are considered a vegetable. So we also have to look at the problem of how we're classifying these foods of what they are, because you said we have a lack of vegetables, but we have some places that are classifying French fries as a vegetable. Well, so and white potatoes have anti-nutrients.
Well, I was going to say, well, interestingly, potatoes are in the nightshade family, right? So,
yep.
And nightshades are usually something that are reactive to people with autoimmune diseases. So, eating the fries can be definitely causing some flare-ups in people. Not only the rancid seed oil that they're cooked in, but also the potato itself can be quite inflammatory on the body's system for somebody that already has an autoimmune condition. And one of the reasons why is, in a lot of research that's being done, it's usually an underlying issue with compromised gut health that's caused the autoimmune disease to flare up in the first place. So I'm an autoimmune paleo certified coach. And so when I was first diagnosed with my Hashimoto's, I found that paleo was really helpful for me because it helped clear out a lot of the processed foods and reactive type foods that was causing my Hashimoto's to flare. And so in the autoimmune paleo diet, it eliminates a lot of nightshades, nuts, seeds, gluten, dairy, all those things that can be inflammatory in the body's system. Then you need to do the underlying work to help the gut heal again. And once the gut is healed, then you can start seeing whether you might bring some foods back in again. So maybe some people being able to bring nuts and seeds back in again in small amounts, maybe a bit of dairy, that kind of thing. So some people can bring some certain things back in. I would always say that gluten is one of those iffy areas, and it's usually not recommended to bring gluten back in if you have an autoimmune disease. I think it is just one of those foods, or one of those chemicals, or what is it? Not even a chemical, call it a chemical. One of those things,
a protein, right?
A protein in food that you're just going to have to stay away from, because it can cause any little problems with reacting in the body. So even a smallest molecule of gluten can send somebody that's been sensitive to it to mount their immune system into another reaction.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. Like, would you think it's accurate to say, because this is what I've heard, and maybe I just want to make sure I'm interpreting it correctly based on like your knowledge, that most autoimmune diseases are rooted in gut health and maybe stem from leaky gut. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we need to look at that. Like you mentioned, the foods that we are eating that cause leaky gut. And for listeners who may not be fully familiar with what leaky gut is, but it's when those tight junctions in your small intestine that are supposed to keep all the foods and undigested proteins and stuff in your digestive system, they escape, they go out into your body. Your body sees those undigested proteins as foreign proteins and foreign invaders that they need to attack. And a lot of times those proteins look like cells that in our body that we need: thyroid cells, pancreas cells, beta cells, and hormones. And that's how we end up with autoimmune disease. So you brought up gluten. So let's talk about these things that come in our food, because there are a lot of things that we eat that are in our food that are going to cause dysbiosis in the gut and leaky gut within our gut. And those are going to be pesticides, right? Those are going to disrupt our gut, specifically glyphosate, which people know as Roundup. And that's, it's an herbicide that is used. It's applied to food crops to kill weeds and grasses, but that has specifically been linked to MS, type 1 diabetes, and inflammatory bowel disease, because it's linked to interrupting the functioning of our gut bacteria. Then those food additives, those are also disrupting our gut. Something else, though, is when we're eating fast food, a lot of that is conventionally raised meat, dairy, those things, those types of food, those animals, they are treated with veterinary drugs. And that means we are going to be consuming portions of those drugs, antibiotics, hormones that these conventionally raised animals are eating. And then that is also going to disrupt our gut, our body. That is also going to cause harm and lead to susceptibility for disease.
Yeah, definitely. And then on the lifestyle factors, stress, and then we're not making enough stomach acid to be able to digest those foods. So then they're kind of sitting undigested in the body, and then that can cause a reaction as well. So,
yeah. And going back to nutrients, we know that being in a stress state, our body is going to excrete more nutrients than in a relaxed state. So I guess really to sum up this article is that you don't just wake up one day with autoimmune disease. There is a disease progression. There are going to be a multitude of factors that contribute to that disease pathway. Yes, diet is huge, but it's also those lifestyle factors, and our genetics play a role too. We can't ignore that. But we know as NTPs, as holistic health professionals, that I already said this, there are many pathways that lead to disease, but we can start with the food. And whether or not it's a Western diet, fast food or not, much of our food does contain toxic chemicals, contains genetically modified organisms, contains pesticides. These are things that contribute to our body's overall toxic load. These are things that are going to increase inflammation. Yes, our bodies have natural ways of clearing these things out and detoxifying, but we can't overload it. We can't burden our body with all of these things because it just can't keep up. So that's the disease pathway. That's the pathway to disease. Eat bad foods and chemicals, and there you go.
Yeah, and the big one that we didn't even mention there too is sleep. You know, not so many people not getting enough adequate sleep, and that's a really big factor too. That can also cause inflammation in the body as well. I think a lot of these all just kind of like lead back to inflammation, right?
It does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And other things that lead to like inflammation and specifically autoimmune disease. Yes, you mentioned sleep. You mentioned the soil not having enough nutrients. Soils also contain heavy metals. Heavy metals are going to lead to autoimmune disease. And we don't even have time in this episode, but like mold and mycotoxins, those are also going to lead to disease. So there's a lot of factors. I like that this article is drawing light of the dietary factor, but to say that diet is just one thing and that it's the Western diet sweeping the nation causing an increase in disease, I think we're pointing the finger in the wrong direction, and we need about 10 more fingers to point in all the directions.
Spirit fingers.
It's not just, yes, exactly. It's not just any one thing. It's a collective like culmination of several factors.
And personally, I know that's how I best manage my autoimmune disease also, is looking at the whole lot of factors there. So yeah, I know when I'm not getting enough sleep, I'll have a flare of my Hashimoto's. I know when I'm not eating the right food, same thing. I know when I'm stressed, same thing. And also there's also something, again, we didn't mention, still talking about the holistic pathway, but also an emotional level there as well. So
yes.
I think that's a really big one. And interestingly, and some people might not, connect at that kind of emotional level, but with my thyroid, it's a lot to do with my voice and my throat and myself being heard and the message that I want to get out and portray. So if I'm not looking after myself and not speaking my truth and connecting at that emotional level with what it is that I need to say and to stand up for myself and project, then I do know that can also play an effect on the flaring up of my Hashimoto's as well. That's why I talk a lot.
Interesting.
I talk a lot.
Very interesting. Yeah, I don't know too much about that, but I know I've heard about the different organs being tied to different emotions and stuff, like specifically like the liver and anger and stuff. So that's interesting about the thyroid. I definitely believe that there's an emotional connection to everything, especially when it comes to disease or where we have weaknesses within our bodies. It's not just what we're doing, but it's also those emotions that we hold on to. Is it the book The Body Keeps the Score that goes into that stuff?
Yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah. What's his name?
Okay.
Bessel or
I have it on the shelf somewhere. I don't have my glasses on. Can't see.
I think though it's not something like it's new to Western beliefs, but like, exactly what you were talking about was, it's ancient Chinese philosophy that they've been talking about since forever. So it's just more that in the Western world, we don't bring that layer in as much as other cultures do.
So we brought in our Western toxic food, and they're bringing in their Eastern ancient wisdom.
Yeah, that's right.
It doesn't seem like a fair trade.
No, it's not a fair trade.
Okay, well, let's talk about the flip side and some happy news, because we have another article here that is titled "Doctor Reverses Autoimmune Disease with Diet." This is exciting, and I don't think this is talked about enough. Like, I think we like to focus on the disease, and we like to focus on the doom and gloom and, oh, your food is so bad, you're going to get disease. But we don't focus enough on how healing and restorative our food can be, and how changing lifestyle factors, you actually can reverse some autoimmune diseases, like this doctor has. And I think Dr. Terry Walls is very famous for this. She reversed her MS with her dietary and lifestyle changes. So this article, it just starts out saying, it's very apparent that toxicity is a contributing factor to autoimmune disease, yet conventional treatments do not take this into account. Instead, powerful drugs are used and try to shut down the immune response and leave the body susceptible to other diseases. They provide temporary relief by masking the symptoms, but they do not heal the root cause of the disease. True, true, true. When
Mhm.
you have an autoimmune disease, if you are put on, a lot of people get put on steroids or some kind of immune suppressing medication, which does leave your body more susceptible to taking on other infections or getting sick more easily in other ways because you're suppressing your immune system. So it doesn't attack itself, but then also it can't protect itself.
Mm.
What else? What else? Okay. Um, okay, so this article says once you identify and address environmental factors that are contributing to your autoimmune disease, including toxic exposures, you can reset your body to its optimal function. So it can stop attacking itself and you can even possibly reverse your condition. So there is good news for all.
Yeah. So she's mainly talking about how she did this with diet, and we've been talking about all the other factors as well. But I can definitely see she's replacing a lot of inflammatory foods with nutrient dense foods. I think the focus is always on nutrient dense. It isn't really that you need a paleo diet as such, or you need a keto or whatever to help with your autoimmune, or even carnivore, which is, you know, some people have claimed that they've just eaten beef and salt and been able to help their autoimmune diseases, which is great. But I think it is just the adding nutrient dense foods back in, which is what's happening there, because they are full of minerals, which are helping with the health of the body. So this doctor is interesting. She is plant-based. So when people read the article, you will see that. I was actually thinking as I was reading, I was like, oh, Holly, maybe we should get her on to talk about how she manages to do this as a plant-based diet, because I haven't heard of doing an autoimmune protocol with nutrient density and eating only plant-based. Because if I'm just wondering where she's getting her protein from. And her healthy fats. Obviously, she's probably getting the healthy fats from avocados and things like that. But a lot of people have with autoimmune have sensitivities. So if she's eating legumes, again, going back to that leaky gut or gut health, that's actually going to be quite harsh on the system while they're healing their gut. So yeah, it'd be interesting to find out exactly what her diet is suggesting.
Yeah. It would be. And also, if you're focusing on healing the gut, as you mentioned, like the legumes and stuff, but also just sometimes those leafy vegetables and those cruciferous vegetables are very hard to digest. And if you're going to be taking it to that next step to actually healing the gut, I know in AIP, like bone broth is like such a staple in repairing the gut and getting all that good collagen and stuff. So yeah, it would be interesting to see exactly how she's doing that. I'm curious.
And also for compliancy as well. This is something that I read the other day that I found really interesting. The way to be successful at any therapeutic diet, which, you know, a autoimmune protocol is a therapeutic diet, something that you're on while you're having these issues, and then you may then reintroduce some foods afterwards. Or to any diet, if anyone's thinking of diet, I'm just using the word diet loosely here, is the way to be compliant is to make sure you're not hungry. So if you can make sure you're not hungry on any type of dietary way that you're choosing to eat, and still eating healthily foods, obviously, then that will make you more compliant to stick with the protocol or whatever it is that you're doing. So in terms of plant-based, we know that it's proteins and fats that satiate us. So I'm just wondering how she's getting those proteins and fats to be compliant with what she's doing there. Just a little side note.
Yeah, because no one wants to white knuckle their way through a diet, especially when you're on a healing diet or therapeutic diet where that stress management plays such a crucial role in it. You don't want to be miserable in your diet. You want to be happy and enjoying your diet.
Well, and you're already, like, I know most people with autoimmune diseases are pretty tired. You know, you're pretty, like, you know, when I first was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, I literally couldn't get out of bed. And my husband would say to me, don't you want to go to work today? Do you want to change your job or something? Is that making you, like, he thought I was depressed. And I was like, no, I physically cannot get out of bed. Like my muscles and my bones in my body are so dead tired. And he's kind of like, you're in your early 20s, like you shouldn't be like this. So back then I couldn't imagine sitting there having to prepare, I don't know, green smoothies and legumes and all of those things. I just really want quick nutrient dense foods that are going to heal me. Cup of bone broth, throw some meat into the slow cooker and added some veggies with that. I just want things that are easy to prepare, and easy to digest as well, because that takes up a lot of energy too.
Yes. And that's where you said easy to digest. That's where we get into, like you said, the slow cooker, cooking things slowly, doing all our traditional methods of cooking.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Anything else we want to add on here, Leah? Do you think we covered it?
I just think some really good resources if people do have autoimmune disease and want to continue like exploring a little bit more. Dr. Sarah Ballantyne, has amazing, a lot of resources, and talks a lot about nutrient density. Same with like Mickey Truscott, Angie Alt. We've had them on the podcast a couple of times. Really focused on nutrient density. Mickey's got great cookbooks that are all nutrient dense foods inside of them. And then maybe if you're looking at changing the diet and it's just a bit overwhelming, then working with an autoimmune paleo certified coach like myself, or finding someone that's done the Wales protocol, Terry's protocol, even a nutritional therapy practitioner like ourselves. We've all been trained in therapeutic diets for autoimmune as well. We have a very vast immune module that we undertake in our training.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, if you're someone who likes to DIY things and do it on their own, I know there's a lot of people out there, and I've been that person too. But when you are specifically going on a therapeutic diet, I will say you will save yourself so much time and energy and effort just working with someone. And you'll be surprised, not all nutrition coaches are going to cost you an arm and a leg. Like you can get some help out there that is going to work within your budget, and to just have someone to walk that path with you, because healing is not linear. And so going through these therapeutic diets, you're going to have peaks and valleys and ups and downs, and to have someone who's been there, that can walk you through that and let you know, okay, this is normal. This is okay. We will get through this. And this is how we're going to do it. And to be able to see what you're going through and to adjust your protocol, adjust what's going on. So you're not wasting your energy trying to figure out what to do. You can focus your energy on healing and getting better, and let someone else do the thinking and figuring out for you.
Yeah, so true.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, like, what is your why in doing this? Like for me, when I heard that statistic that most people who have autoimmune diseases will have another autoimmune disease, I was like, I've already got one that is more than enough to manage. I do not want to have multiple ones. And I can already see in my family, my mum has multiple autoimmune diseases. I do not want to go down that path. And I want to be able to run around with my children, and then, grandchildren when the children have children, like I want to live a long lasting life where I'm able to move around and stuff. So I do not want to be plagued with a good word, with multiple autoimmune diseases. So if diet and lifestyle can make a difference, then that's what I'm going to go for.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. All right. Well, we will link up all those resources that Leah mentioned, maybe even plug in a couple coaches that we know that you could work with. Says, I think coaches are like a pair of jeans. You want to find one that fits just right. So you talk to a few before deciding, but definitely we'll link up those resources for you, and some books and stuff.
Great. Yeah, definitely. Well, that's the end of today's episode. Our theme music is created by Andrew Bowden, and production services are by Kevin Kennedy Spain of Disc of Light Media. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week.